Well, good morning. Everybody doing all right? All right, you guys don't sound very lively. So let's play a game. You guys want to play a game? All right, here we go. I'm going to give you guys two options, and you will vote for your favorite option, okay? So how do you vote? I don't care. It's not scientific. You can raise your hand. You can jump and scream. You get 10 cool points for every backflip you do, all right? If somebody does a backflip, I would love that, all right? So let's play a game. It's kind of a which one would you prefer? Okay, so the first two options are Coke and Pepsi. So who prefers Pepsi? Both of you. Coke. All right. Y'all know Pepsi was born in the Carolinas, right? You kind of have to like it. Okay, let's see here. Broccoli or collard greens? Broccoli? All right, collard greens? Oh, see, I'm right in the middle. I like to get my broccoli and wrap it in collard greens. All right, let's do this. The Carolina Panthers or the Atlanta Falcons? Panthers? Wow. So I'm not sure if that was a vote or just an... Okay, who was the other team? Falcons. All right. So, that did not work at all. Let's do this one. All right. Clemson or South Carolina? Clemson? All right, Carolina? Okay. That's good. I'll say everybody that voted for Clemson, there's a sign right there that says exit. And no, I'm just playing. Please don't do that. But you guys, those who voted for Clemson, you know you live in Columbia, right? You know, the Gamecocks are here. Do you guys know that? Okay, just want to make sure that you guys are aware of that. All right, well, anyway, I wanted to do that to show how mixed the crowd is. We like different stuff. We do different things for fun. We watch different teams. Apparently, nobody watches the Panthers or the Falcons. So I heard somebody shout Cowboys, so maybe that's our team. But we can overcome all that stuff, right? And still hang out in the same room most of the time, unless it's Buffalo Wild Wings on Monday Night Football. But I want to kind of bring that up. I want you guys to be kind of thinking about that and then think about Christianity. Did you guys know that even since the time of the disciples, people have been trying to make Christianity a political movement or a political system? Even the disciples were like, when Jesus rose, he was like, oh, is this now you're going to do it? We're going to restore the kingdom? You're going to do it now? And Jesus is like, no, go and tell people about me. And they wanted to do that. And throughout the Middle Ages, different kings tried to implement Christianity as their political system. Led to some pretty bad stuff going through that. And even today, we try to do it. But today, it's not the same as it is anymore. Today, we're divided along like political parties. We're divided along different lines along that thing is. But a story about that is my grandfather, all right? My grandfather was amazing, but he was a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, okay? Let me tell you how dyed-in-the-wool. When I turned 18, he took me down to the courthouse to register for the draft and to vote, okay? I was 18. I didn't really understand voting. I didn't go to school a lot. I skipped all the time. And I think my senior year of high school, I skipped like 100 days of school. So can't believe my parents didn't kill me. Anyway, he takes me down. I don't know what's going on. The lady hands me a paper ballot because it so happens that we're doing like local elections that day. And she said, what party are you? And I'm like, my granddad says, and he goes, he's a Democrat. And I was like, I'm a Democrat. And I didn't know what it meant. And then he gets me the ballot, and he shows me on the bottom there's a little punch you can do, because we did paper ballots. I don't even know if they still do paper ballots or not, but there was a thing you could hole punch on the bottom, said split ticket Democrat. And he said, what you do is every time you vote, you come in and you hit that, and that means every Democrat on the ballot gets your vote. I'm like, oh, okay. So I go in the booth, click it, put it in a little box, walk out. I'm like, ooh, I voted. Didn't know what I was doing. But if I would have told Pop, what's why I called him Pop, if I would have told him that God lets Republicans into heaven, he would have said I was committing blasphemy. He was crazy about this kind of stuff. And actually, it's kind of a funny story. When I was overseas with the Army, I signed him up for all of the Republican newsletters and blamed it on my sister. It was awesome. It was awesome. So, but anyway, but the idea that Christianity can be used as a political system is just simply incorrect. It's actually designed to work within any political system that man can create. That's why it works in communist China and, our republic that we have here in America. It's designed as a kingdom that we serve while on this earth inside of the political systems that we create here. And because it's designed this way, we can actually take the gospel and we can fit it into any kind of culture that man has. The big fancy word for it, it's called contextualization. Okay, you can impress your friends with that word. It means you take the gospel and you fit it into the context of the culture into which you're speaking. It's kind of like Paul in 1 Corinthians 9:22. He says, I become all things to all men that I might win a few. That's kind of a contextualization verse. I can be like these people to share the gospel with them. So we're going to look at a story today in Acts chapter 17 where Paul does an amazing job of contextualizing the gospel. And I want us to kind of learn from this today. Or I want us to learn how to share Christ in a crisis culture this morning. Are you guys on board? All right, this side of the room is on board. These guys went to sleep. All right, so I'm going to face you guys for a little while, wake you up. When we joined Paul in Acts 17, he is now in Athens, Greece. He is waiting on his compadres, his homies, to come visit with him. And he's walking around. He's in Athens, and Athens is known as the mother of wisdom. In verse 21 of 17, it says, the Athenians did nothing all day except for listen and tell something new. Isn't that the life? Sit around and talk all day? That'd be amazing. But these guys had never heard anything about the Old Testament. They weren't familiar with the Jewish creation story of the Old Testament. They weren't familiar with any prophecies of a Messiah coming to save the world. They concerned themselves mainly with Greek and Roman mythology, so Paul was in a situation where he wanted to share the gospel with people who had no idea of any background that he could build off of. Kind of sounds like America today. There was a point in our country where we could safely assume that anybody we talked to had at least heard some of the famous Bible stories. That's not really true anymore. I don't know if you guys know this, but during the week I chaplain 8 different companies around the Columbia metro area. It's amazing that, I'll make a comment about the story of David and Goliath, and people will be like, what is that? I don't know the story. I'm like, really? Like, are you living under a rock? But in the 1950s, less than 2% of Americans classified themselves as atheist or agnostic. In 2014, that number was 31%. So America we have plenty of unreached folks out there. And I think, can I give you guys an opinion real quick? I think the best way you can share your faith with an unreached person is letting them know you're a Christian and not being a jerk about it. All right. You guys ever met those folks? Yeah. I was talking to a friend of mine last night in this room right here, and I said, I used to think all Christians were like that. He's like, yeah, me too. It's crazy. So let's look at Acts 17, and let's figure out how to not be jerks. You want to? Let's go be not jerks together. All right, Acts 17, 16 and 17 is where we're going to start. Now, while Paul was waiting for them at Athens, his spirit was provoked within him as he saw that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with the Jews and the devout persons, and in the marketplace every day with those who happened to be there. First thing I want you to notice, Paul's spirit was provoked. He was provoked to share the gospel because he saw all of the idols that were in the town of Athens. He knew that these people were seeking something, and the way that they were seeking it was not going to meet their need. He knew that these statues could not do anything for that connection that they sensed that they missed. Humans were created for relationship with God. In Genesis, you see that God spoke everything into creation. He spoke light, he spoke land and sea and water and stars. But when he created human beings, he formed them with his hands. We are the only thing that God created in Genesis by touching it. After the fall, we no longer were able to have that touch from God. We had a division, a canyon between us and God. And now our souls seek to feel that touch. And so what do? We turn to drugs, alcohol, sex, money. We know it's not going to fill the hole, but we cram it in there until it numbs us just enough to forget that something's missing. Blaise Pascal, one of my favorite philosophers, I'm going to read a long quote to you. It's like 5 or 6 sentences, but then I want to summarize it for you in a way that you've heard of it. He famously said in his book, Pensées, "What else does this craving and this helplessness proclaim but that there was once in man a true happiness, of which all that now remains is the empty print and trace? This he tries in vain to fill with everything around him, seeking in things that are not there the help he cannot find in those that are. Though none can help, since this infinite abyss can be filled only with an infinite and immutable object, in other words, by God himself." Now, you've probably heard that statement in its summarized form. It was recently, the last 30 or 40 years, it was recently summarized into there's a God-shaped hole in all of us. You guys heard that before? There's a God-shaped hole in all of us. It's the print that can only be filled by God himself. And so we feel this need to connect with the divine, but we don't know how to meet it. And that's when we start creating idols, such as money and sex and drugs and all that other stuff that we try to fill in. Those things become idols in our lives, and they will not fill that void. Now, Paul recognized that what the Athenians were seeking, that feeling of the God-shaped hole, was not going to come from these idols. So he was provoked to share with them, to reason with them. I love that. He reasoned with them. He didn't go into the square and be like, "Oh, y'all's going to hell." He didn't do that. He wasn't mean about it. He wasn't judgmental about it. He didn't do any of that stuff. He sat in the marketplace and he reasoned with them. I love that. See, the easiest thing to do is to judge someone's lifestyle and choices. That's simple. The hardest thing to do is choose to love someone regardless of their lifestyle and choices. That's the hard thing to do. Paul could have easily ignored these guys. Paul was a Jew. The Messiah came to the Jews. He could have just been like, "These nasty Greeks, man. These guys, there's no hope for them. There's no hope for these guys." And Paul could have just went on about his business, waited for Silas and his friends to get there, and just moved on with his life. But that was not Paul. He was provoked to reason with them. How many times have we held back to reason with someone about God because it violates a social norm or it be seen as impolite? I want us to be convinced that letting someone slide precariously toward hell is the least loving thing that we can do. If we truly want to love our neighbors, we have to be truthful with our neighbors. If those of you, I'm close to several people in this room, and I'm close to those people because they're not afraid to tell me the truth. I love that. The truth is what sets us free. And everything that we do, we have to speak the truth in love, and everything that we do has to be motivated by love and covered under the blanket of love. I have never known anybody that became a Christian because a Christian told them they were going to hell. I've never met anybody. I'm sure they're out there. Mathematically, it's probably an impossibility, but I've never met anybody that said, "Hey, I came to Jesus because that guy said I was going to hell and I don't want to go there." But I have met many people who have come to Christ because Christians loved them unconditionally. I want to look at Ephesians 5 real quick, the first 2 verses. It says, "Therefore, be imitators of God as beloved children, and walk in love, as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." So being provoked in his spirit, Paul finds a way to share the gospel with the Athenians. And he does it. His spirit is provoked because the love of Christ overwhelms him for these people. He wants to know that they don't have to die without Christ, that there is a way for their lives to change. And he is not his spirit will not allow him to leave Athens until he has told as many people will listen. You know, we have a reasonable faith. And it's time that we be reasonable about our faith. There's so many things that you can go through. Every branch of science, every scientific discipline has always come back to prove the Bible. Biology, archaeology, all of them, chemistry. They've always come back to say exactly what the Bible said in the first place. Now, the Bible's not a scientific textbook. You can't read it like a scientific textbook. But when the Bible speaks to science, science has always come back to prove it right. Isn't that weird? What else is weird is Christianity is the only religion in the world that's ever happened to. Science, I believe, tells us how God did it. He set up this system, how he did creation. I love science. I'm not good at science. I watch that science channel a lot, and I'm pretty sure that not all of it's science, but it's fascinating to see. Like, there's a show on there called How the Universe Works, and I'm like, wow, dude, God did that. That's crazy. Have you guys ever gone out and looked at, like not outside, but like at the library or something, looked at all the different galaxies, looked at the stars that God placed? And if one thing is different about our system, we all die. It's not our job to judge people. It's our job to love people. I was telling a brother this morning on the lobby that we were talking about the craziness in Charlottesville. And I told him, I don't really care if the statues stay up or not, or if they come down, put them in a museum. I don't care. But what I do care about is anything that divides God's children needs to be getting rid of. And you're God's child whether you're a believer or not. So let's walk in love. I love the way that Paul introduces the gospel to these people. Let's look at verses 22 and 23. It says, So Paul, standing in the midst of the Areopagus, said, Men of Athens, I perceive that in every way you are very religious. For as I passed along and observed the objects of your worship, I found also an altar with this inscription, To the unknown God. What, therefore, you worship as unknown, this I proclaim to you. Paul took time to notice what was going on in their culture. He didn't know these people individually, but he was able to connect with them all by using something that they all had in common. The Athenians were obviously very worried about keeping the gods happy, to the point where they built an altar to the unknown God. If we're going to worship, keep these gods happy, but just in case there's one we don't know about, let's keep that sucker happy too. Logical, right? Well, that's where they were concerned. And Paul recognized this as an avenue to introduce them to the one true God. What you guys worship is unknown. Let me introduce you to this. Let me show you what it is. That would have piqued their interest. That would have immediately gotten into them. Do you know that Paul also used some of their own literature and philosophy in his little speech that he does right here on Mars Hill? Did you guys know that? Just for kicks and gigs, in verse 28, chapter 17, verse 28, Paul quotes the philosopher Epimenides of Crete. He uses a line from his philosophy there. And then he uses another line in that same verse from Aratus's poem of Phaenomena. This was all Greek literature. So Paul was able to reach into their culture and pull out little fragments of stuff they were very familiar with and introduce them to Christ. Isn't that neat? That's crazy that he was able to do that. And I think that this is an area that we all have room to improve in. We have to not, Jesus called us fishers of men, right? The only way you catch a fish is by putting the lure where the fish is. We have to step in and enter into people's lives. Not to just grab them and yank them out, but to do life with them. Walk side by side with them. and show them, not tell them, show them the love of Christ. We can tell them all day long, but they will not believe it until they see its fruit in your life. It'll just be another empty philosophy, an empty teaching, until they see the fruit actually happening in somebody's lives. So we're with people every day in various stages of life. Think about the people at work. Think about the people at school, the people at the grocery store, that dude that cut you off this morning that you said, you better be glad I'm on my way to church, Bo. You know that guy? He cut me off. He was just cutting us all off. But they are all in various stages of life. And we have the opportunity for the Holy Spirit to provoke us so that we can enter into their lives and show them God's love. You know, we've been telling the world about God's love for millennia. Let's start showing them God's love. The book of James says, if somebody comes to you and he's hungry and you say, well, be well fed, God loves you, I hope that all works out for you. He said, your faith is empty. It doesn't mean anything to that guy. But if you bring him in and you feed him and you meet his physical need, then you earn the right to help him meet his spiritual need. We've got to get better. I've got to get better at doing this. So when we enter in and do this, this is the only way that we can earn the right to speak the truth in love to people. Now we can all go downtown tomorrow when millions of people are gathered to see the eclipse and have giant signs that say, you know, come to Jesus or go to hell. We can do all this stuff. We could build our ministry based off of Westboro Baptist Church if we wanted to, but it doesn't work. All you do is push people further from God. But if we just step in and be like, you know what, I've been down, but let me show you how it worked for me. Or if someone else is hurting, you don't even have to say anything. You can just be there. You know, it's funny, I chapel a lot. I spend a lot of time at hospitals. And I used to always think, I've got to figure out what to say to these people when I walk in here. And so I called one of my mentors and I asked him, the guy's been in ministry for 30, 40 years, and I asked him, I said, how do you come up with stuff to say to people that's just, you know, lost a baby or something like that? And he said, the best thing you can do is keep your mouth shut and hold that baby. Because if you go in there and tell them that, you know, God, it was just God's will, the Father has every right in the world to just punch you in the mouth. And I would expect him to. He said, just go in, because most of the time in those situations, people aren't going to remember what you said. They'll remember that you were there. So now I go in hospitals, I don't hardly say anything. How are you? What's the prognosis? And I just sit there and I show them love by being present. I'll go get ice water for the patient or something. This is where it's imperative that our lives line up with the truth that we speak. It's absolutely imperative that you practice what you preach. Because if you're saying that this road leads to heaven, but you're walking down this road, you're a contradiction and it cannot be true. And so what they're going to do is not put the idea that you're not living it. They're going to put the idea that God is not real in their hearts. So it's absolutely imperative that we practice what we preach. They have to see the fruit in our lives, and it's going to be difficult for them to adopt it into their lives until they see it in our lives. So let's practice that. Our mission is to build caring relationships and trust that God will open the door for us to share the gospel. Our mission is to build caring relationships, and then God opens the door for us to share the gospel. You know, it's funny that Jesus said, they will know that you're disciples by the love that you have for one another. Jesus said, husbands, love your wives. Jesus said, love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus said, love your enemies. I don't see anywhere that Jesus said, you're the one to cast judgment on people's sins. My son, my 7-year-old son, every stinking time I get in my recliner, he climbs up at that sucker with me. Right? It's not big enough for both of us. So but this is the way he does it. He stands in front of me, and he kind of starts waddling back. Okay? And I know it's coming. I'm watching him do it. Then he kind of sits beside my leg, and then he just wiggles back until he gets all the way up in that chair. Okay? That's what we do to God when we start making judgment on other people. We start taking the judgment seat from God. And God's like, your job's to love. It's his job to do the final judgment. And trust me, you don't want to be the one sitting in that chair. Let God be God, and let's be God's hands and feet. Everything that we do has to be motivated by love. So I'm going to tell you guys a story about a young man that I chaplained. Let's call him James. You want to? James sound good to you guys? Let's call him James. James works at a office building here in town, and I go by this office building once a week, every week, same time of day, same day of the week. That way people know when I'm in the area. They can come talk to me if they want to. The very first time I met James, right? James, this is going to be hard. Very first time I met James, I said, hey, how are you? My name's David Carr. I'm your chaplain. He said, no, thanks, I'm good. And I was like, okay. But he would never talk to me. Never. Now, it was blatantly obvious by looking at his desk that he was in a homosexual relationship. I don't care. But he thought that I would care. So someone tells me after months of me going by, hey, James, how are you? He's like, he just waves me off. Months of doing this, someone tells me that James's dog got hurt its back. One of those little wiener dogs. What are they called? Dachshunds. Wiener dogs, all I could think of. Dachshund hurt his back jumping off the bed. And Robert was like obviously devastated by this. And so I don't know if people typically pray for animals. James! Robert's his cousin. James was devastated by this. And I don't know if people typically pray for animals, but I went by his desk and I said, hey, I heard your little weenie dog got hurt. Can I pray for your dog? The dog's name was Toby. And he was like, yeah, I guess. And so I prayed for little Toby there. And then every week after that, I'd stop by and I wouldn't say, hey, James, how are you? I would say, hey, how's Toby? And he started opening up to me. And he started talking to me about this dog. And after several weeks of James talking to me, he said, I didn't think people like you were supposed to like people like me. And I said, what do you mean people like you and people like me? And that's when he told me about his relationship. And I told him, what you do has nothing to do with me. I'm just here to be a friend and just to show you that God loves you regardless. And it's not my position to tell you one way or the other. Me and this dude are close friends now. But he is that stinking close to the kingdom. He's getting close. But that would have never happened if I'd have just busted in there with my judgmental attitude, right? But it never went down. But because I was willing to take the time to find out something that he was passionate about, his dog, I was able to then start planting seeds of the gospel in his life. The Bible says that some seed, some water, some harvest. So if I keep watering these seeds and planting these seeds, eventually somebody's going to get a harvest out of this. And I'll get to see James in heaven. I'm banking on that. You know, many people, as they grow up, they wish that they could make the world a better place before they die. You guys ever heard that? I just want to leave the world better than I found it. Most people fail at that. Most people don't leave the world a better place than what they found it. But you not only have the opportunity to do this, you have a mandate to do it. To leave the world better by being an example of the love of God, like Paul was to the Athenians. The mission of the church I think can be summarized in this way. The mission of the church is to help people grow in faith. And it doesn't matter where you are on that faith scale, either no faith or super saint. It is the job of the church to meet you where you are and help you move further along the path of faith. That's the mission of the church. Our mission is to enter the lives of people around us, foster a healthy relationship where faith can blossom. That's what Paul did in Greece. He started to foster relationships so that the gospel could be seeded and faith could blossom in a nation of pagans. If you remember nothing that I've said today, I want you to remember this. It is our love that shows Christ's love. It is our love that shows Christ's love. People don't read the Bible. People read Christians. You'll never meet somebody that's not a believer that just reads the Bible for fun. They're not interested in it. They want to see that if you read the Bible, how does it affect your life? And that will tell them why or why not they should get involved with God. So I have a challenge for you this week. Each one of you has a homework assignment. Okay? I'm going to do it too. You ever heard anybody say that, huh? You have homework, I'm going to do it? I wish professors did that. Anyway, bunny trail. Here's your homework assignment. Identify one person this week that you will foster a relationship with in the hopes of sharing the gospel of Christ. So many of you probably had somebody flash in your mind immediately. I've got several that I'm working on. But I want you to think about this week. If you guys would stand with me. I want to tell you something real quick before we pray. You may be the only Jesus that somebody sees. Be a good one. Be a good one. So I'm going to pray for you. Pray for all of us as we go out that we would learn to be good representatives of who God is. A more accurate reflection of who God is. Not letting the world's negativity and hatred encroach on our mission of love. So let's pray together. Father, as we exit this building today, I pray that we would accurately reflect who you are to the people who are broken and dying in this world. Father, use us this week as your hands and feet. Provoke us in our spirit to build relationships that matter. In Jesus' name, amen.
With all that I am, I surrender. I lay everything at your feet. For all that you are, I surrender. In you I had the victory. So take my life, make it yours. Come on through my heart's door. Make me whole, make me new. Take all of me.